Am I on? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Local Government Academy. Happy, what is today? Thursday. And thank you for joining us for maintaining streams in your community. This is a collaborative effort with the Sustainable Community Development Network, which if you're a regular customer, you know we do quite a bit of collaborations with them, part of Sustainable Pittsburgh. And our main collaborator for this particular class is the PA Department of Environmental Protection. Before we get started and before I introduce our presenter, Greg, I'm going to, just as I usually do, run through a few of our upcoming classes. I will not take too much of your time. We want to get straight to the stream class. If you have not, if you have not heard of us, which is possible, we've been around for 34 years. Local Government Academy is a non-profit, non-partisan, non-advocating organization that promotes excellence in local government. We do this through education, such as classes like this, and whether they're webinars, in-person classes, or online classes. We also provide summer internships, technical assistance to low-income communities, and if financially feasible, we offer grants to our communities for different initiatives. Excuse me. Our first class is coming up. So all of these classes are in June. On June 20th, we have a Drones in Your Community with Steel City Drones, and they're a local drone provider, professional drone provider, and they're going to talk about different things to consider when you see drones in your community, just so you understand the regulations behind it and the what's permissible and what's not. So that should be very interesting. This is kind of turning out to be a great big deal with several panel discussions, we have a Sustainable Community Development Network forum called Equitable and Inclusionary Policies to Benefit Your Community. So this is at the City of Duquesne. It's an in-person class, and it goes from 5:30 to 9 on the 26th. And we have currently lined up several great people to talk about the legal and social aspects of equity and inclusion within the community. So check out our website for that, and also you can go on to Sustainable Pittsburgh's website to find more information and register. Our partnership with Washington and Jefferson College with the Center for Energy Policy and Management, we have an Act 13 class coming up. It's a webinar, also free, on the 27th from 1 to 2:15, and we're going to discuss that's the impact fee legislation. We're going to just talk about updates, trends, and projects based around Act 13. So please feel free to join us for that also. We also have a regulations of wireless facilities and local governments, and it's a collaboration with the Cohen Law Group. And the idea behind this class is there are micro towers going up in municipalities along right-of-ways, and regulations in court. There's a lot of movement around this right now, so it would be great if you're part of a municipality to join our class, and Dan Cohen will update you on what is going on and what you can do to make sure that you don't forfeit your rights to your right-of-ways. So very, very, very timely, interesting subject. And lastly, we have a HR-related class called Things I Wish I Had Known About Labor Law When I Started Out. And this is with our partners Campbell, Durant, Beatty, Palumbo, and Miller. And it's a overview of some of the human relations, common human relations situations that happen in municipalities with public sector labor law. So very good. It's a very good primer on what not to do and what to watch out for legally. So please join us for that. That's at the end of July on the 25th. With that said, let's get started with maintaining streams in your community. I would like to introduce Greg Bullish, and he's with the PA Department of Environmental Protection. He is the Environmental Group Manager for Waterways and Wetlands Program. Welcome, Greg. Come on up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just good. I just trashed the props. You let me in a room with props, and I'll trash them every time. So hi, welcome everybody. The presentation, we're talking about DEP permitting. It's actually became more pertinent last night with the storms we've had about what things you can and can't do. We're going to go over a lot of information. I believe you'll be able to ask questions, which we'll address as time allows at the end of the presentation. So, what can you do, legally after the storm, before the storm? To start off with some of the things we typically see as far as complaints that we get. Today, people are calling probably because of the flooding in our office. So, the stream that flows between our properties is dammed up by debris because of my neighbor. My property's really wet, I can't mow it any longer. I lived there for 12 years and never had flooding before. The creek next to my property is flooding my yard. My neighbor is directing a stormwater onto my property. My municipality will not maintain the stream located behind my house. And my neighbor built a dam. These are a lot of comments we commonly see from citizens. And this is usually followed by the phrase, I was told by, you fill in the blank, that you could help. So they call DEP and say, there's a tree in the stream behind my house. I need you to get it out. So I think, we're going to provide a little perspective on DEP and what we're supposed to do in our charge. And this is our mission statement. I'm not going to read our mission statement to you. I'm just going to point out the second, third line. Our mission is to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water from pollution. That's generally what we're about. We're a regulatory agency. So we're not a resource agency, we're not a conservation agency, we're a regulatory agency. So we review and act on permit applications. We conduct inspections and investigations. We take enforcement actions as necessary. We develop regulations, policies, and procedures as required by legislation. Sounds very dry, but that's kind of what we're about often. I'm with the Waterways and Wetlands Program, so we're going to talk a little bit about Waterways and Wetlands Program and our impact. So for our program in Southwest region, so I'm located in Pittsburgh. We have the 10 counties surrounding Pittsburgh as far as our jurisdiction goes. So under Chapter 105, we regulate activities in stream, wetlands, and floodways. This includes wetlands. Wetlands are considered part of watercourses. Under Chapter 106, we do regulate floodplain activities for municipalities and utilities only. We regulate construction stormwater and post-construction stormwater activities. That's in Chapter 102. We inspect dams. So Pennsylvania has a robust dam safety program that's located in Harrisburg. We inspect dams for them. So our engineers go out and inspect roughly 200 to 250 dams a year. For that program. We respond to complaints, part of our program also. My talk is primarily going to be on, I don't know if I have a pointer, but on Chapter 105, because that's what seems to be most people are interested in this time of year and what the activities we're having. So in Chapter 105, we have encroachment. So basically it's an activity that changes the course content of a stream or water course. And this includes structures below the ground, even though they may not be seen. An example would be a utility line, so that's an encroachment. Water obstruction, an obstruction is something that it would obstruct the flow. So basically all obstructions are encroachments, all encroachments are not obstructions. And I have a little illustration. So this is from one of our permitting programs. So a typical plan and cross-sectional view of a utility line going under a stream. So that blue area, I don't know if you can see it's blue, but that rectangle there is showing the encroachment area. So that's the area that's going under the resource. And you might ask why it's wider than the pipeline. Well, the right-of-way is part of the encroachment because the right-of-way will have to be maintained. So there's your encroachment again on the cross section. So the area right there is actually the manhole, part of the manhole sticking up. So that can obstruct the flow, and it's in our jurisdictional area, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So that, that's an obstruction. So that obstruction is an encroachment. The other encroachment is not an obstruction because it's not obstructing the flow, is a simple way of thinking about it. So again, just to reiterate, what needs a permit? So if you're going to do something that changes, expands, diminishes, including wetlands, it's going to need some kind of authorization from the department. So this is a typical cross-section of a stream. You can see the middle part is called the floodway. That's our jurisdictional area. So we regulate activities in the floodway. That includes the stream and the floodway. The floodway is either determined by a FEMA study, or we assume it's 50 feet from the top of bank on either side. Folks can have the opportunity to try to prove that it's less. The area outside the floodway, which in this sketch shows the floodway fringe. There's the DEP part. That's the municipality's responsibility for management. The only time DEP gets involved with those areas is if the municipality itself or a utility wants to place fill in those areas. Since the municipalities are charged with it, they can't regulate themselves, so that's when DEP steps in. I mentioned Chapter 106 before. That's where we step in the floodplain. So some of the things we get in the last couple years, we're seeing areas flood where flooding never happened before. Areas that flood are flooding worse. We saw the news last night. Flooding seems to be getting worse. Our rain events seem more intense. A lot of our stuff is designed for what we call the 2-year storm, so that storm should only happen every other year. It's a statistic, but it seems to be anecdotally that we see 2-year storms much more frequently than every other year. Yeah, and conditions seem to be worsening, I think is the general comment here. So what can I do without a Chapter 105 permit? You can clean and maintain your existing street structures. If you have a structure, such as a bridge or a culvert, you not only can you're required to, and there are standards which we'll talk about a little later in the talk. So we have standards for channel cleaning and bridge maintenance. You can remove debris from the stream floodway working from the bank. So if you want to work from the bank, you can remove material, and you're supposed to remove the material out of the stream. And remove debris from the floodplain. Again, DEP is not regulating floodplain activities, but remember, floodplain is an area where when you have flood flows, that's where the excess water will go out so it doesn't go and cause more problems downstream. So I think one of the things, as we go through these with municipalities and other elected officials, we see, they don't understand the process. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this, and we work with people to try to get the authorizations they need. So one of the things that was developed by DEP folks, I wish I could say I had a lot to do with it, but I had nothing to do with it. I love it though. If you don't have it, you should get it. The link shows at the bottom of the page. If you don't want to type that much, I did an independent search on my computer. If you type in DEP stream guidelines, it invariably showed up as the first thing. And you click on it. It's a document put together about what you can do. One, what you can do without a permit, what you can do, what you might need a permit, and what you can do that definitely needs a permit. So we're going to go through some examples of the part of this document is the green light. So things you don't need any approval from DEP. So removing non-native man-made material. So tires, appliances. I know we did cleanups where we found safes in the stream. Those can be removed from the bank, and they need to be removed. Removing wooded debris while standing in the stream. So if a tree goes down in the stream, you can cut it up and take it out. Again, the trigger is going to be equipment in the stream is going to be the trigger. If you're working from the bank or you're working with hand equipment and pulling stuff out, no permit. So you can, if you stand on the bank here and remove it, you can have the piece of equipment go over to lift it out, because some of this debris or these trees might be rather large. So if you look at it, it says picking, not digging into the stream bed. So you're picking stuff out. If you're winching something out, if you have to winch it out, drag it out, my only caution is, if you damage the stream bank, you might just need to reseed it or something. Cutting trees off with a stump. So you would do this along what I call the floodway earlier, the edge of the stream. leaving the root system in does help stabilize the banks. Green light go, there's some more additional things we're talking about. Cleaning out culverts. Again, we'll go over, if you have a culvert in a stream, you're required to maintain it. And we'll go over the standards again in a couple of slides. Removing gravel and flood debris from around bridges and culverts. If you have a permit, it probably has a condition in that says you must remove the flood debris from around the bridge. You must maintain your culvert. You don't need a permit to plant to plant trees and other plants on stream banks and riparian areas. And riparian areas refers to the buffer area between the stream and upland. We find buffer areas are extremely important to maintain the health of streams. Adopting management ordinance or best practice. So that's something municipalities can do to manage development or construction around streams. Crossing your stream to access the property immediately after flood. So if your bridge washes out, you need to get over across the water. You can do that. Again, if the conditions are safe. Obviously, if it's raging flood, you don't want to go into the stream. So next is the yellow light. So these actions are likely required DEP notification. This is where, I think if the slowdowns are the right thing, you might want to check with us if you think you need to do it. This talks about emergency permits a little bit, and we're going to go into more detail about emergency permits. One thing is they're suggesting you want to contact DEP before you begin. Rebuild roads and bridges across streams. I don't know a scenario where if you're rebuilding a structure across the stream where you don't need an authorization from us. You need some kind of authorization, and that's the yellow light part. Stream bank stabilization. Again, depending on what you're doing and where it is, you probably need some kind of authorization from us. Armoring stream banks with engineered riprap. Emergency situations. Again, we do have emergency permits. Again, this is a yellow light, but I don't see a scenario where you should go in and put stuff on the banks of a stream to try to armor it without an authorization from the DEP. Removing gravel bars. So if you're in a channel above one of your culverts, you can remove a gravel bar. If you're working from the bank, you can remove the gravel bar. And there are some restrictions to that. Repairing a bridge or culvert. Repairing a bridge or culvert, depending on what it is, it most likely will require some kind of authorization. If you're just doing something on the deck and it's not affecting the waterway opening, you might be okay. Again, it doesn't hurt to call and get some clarification. Removing a bridge or culvert in danger of failure. Well, if the bridge is going to fail and it's going to collapse and cause problems, by all means, remove it. And you probably need to come in and tell us what you did and how you're going to fix it. But if it's an emergency, it's going to kill people. You need to do it. Okay, then the next is the red light. These actions definitely require permits. So redirecting the flow of stream by reshaping gravel bars, moving gravel in the stream bank. A lot of folks over the years I will call it tinkering. They put, I got some extra concrete, I'm going to pour it over the bank. Typically these things in and of themselves seem innocent, but they can cause many problems further downstream because the streams are systems. So that anyone who does something to affect the system can affect the people downstream and upstream. So we really need to review and have some authorization for that. Again, armoring stream banks with concrete, construction debris, and those are very concerning things. If you want to use armoring with concrete you remove from a road, concrete and streams don't get along necessarily because of the pH and the constituents in the concrete. Construction debris, I can't think of a construction debris that would be an appropriate thing to use to armoring a stream bank. And we found over the years there's many natural things you can do in streams to enhance the stream banks themselves and protect them. Moving or relocating a stream, you definitely need a permit for that. There's no way around that. Dredging streams, and we'll talk a little bit more about the word dredging later. Dredging, I dread the word dredge. When someone says, can we dredge the stream? I just have to pause for that one. Creating dikes, if you're going to, creating a dike, obviously you're changing the structure of the stream system by keeping it in the banks. Creating a dike requires a permit. Damming streams requires a permit. It depends on the size of the dam, the size of the watershed. It may require a permit from dam safety. Impacting the stream itself, if it's not a big dam, it may just require a Chapter 105 permit. But if you don't know, then you should contact us. Building a new bridge or culvert. Obviously, you're creating something that might be an obstruction. The bridge or culvert's generally going to be an obstruction, even if it does pass the flow properly. It's still an obstruction. You need a permit. We have a few slides on activities that we can say, does it need a permit or not? Does this need a permit? So you have a tree down. Do you need a permit to remove it? And this one's a big no. There's nowhere. There's some water, but it's water on the street. It's outside. Based on the picture, it's outside our jurisdictional area. You don't have to get a permit from DEP to remove that. That was an easy one. They need a permit for this one. So we see an excavator in the stream working on the bank. This is a big yes. You definitely need a permit to get it in. And I know, some things I note, the stream looks like it's got a lot of sediment in it already. It doesn't look much worse behind it, but there are no erosion sedimentation controls on that thing. It looks like the water's high. That's definitely a permit from us. They need a permit for this. So we have a culvert that's impacted. So they can maintain this one's, do you need a permit? Under the standards, they can maintain this. My only question is, can they, at this point, do the work from the bank? If they can do it from the bank, they don't need a permit. I don't see a way. We don't see the whole area. It doesn't look like there's a way to actually unclog that from the bank. So you probably need to do some kind of some authorization from us to unclog that. Concern is when you unclog it, if there's a lot of water behind it, how it's going to suck into that culvert. So in this one, I would probably say that the people who own this culvert are not doing routine maintenance. It could have been from a storm event, but it looks like more than that. So this scenario we've seen a lot lately with landslides and road slides. So you have a tree down, the road slipped away. Do you need a permit from DEP to do this? No one answers? No one? Okay. So I don't, again, in this picture, and these are from the internet. The internet's great, but they don't always give us everything. I don't see any stream in this picture. So I'm going to assume this happened upland, no streams involved, no permits required. You can have the same scenario where the top of that tree maybe is in a stream. If you figure 50 feet from the top of the bank, you're probably in the floodway. You would need a permit to do that activity. This one, looks like an emergency scenario. They're going to lose the road. There might be some utilities through there. It looks like things that look like manholes. So, this is one we'll talk about. Maybe you think about as an emergency permit kind of activity. Do you need a permit for this? So it looks like a culvert under a road washed away. You do need an authorization for it. It looks like the road, this could be, depending on how fast you need it, we do have emergency permits for this stuff. This is the next scenario here was this woman, obviously, I'm assuming she's in her driveway for her house and she, her culvert washed away. I would not walk across that. She needs a way to get across. This is clearly an emergency. And we would issue an emergency permit. It looks like maybe the culvert's still sitting in there, but there was some event that actually overwhelmed the system. So even though she would need a permit to replace it, we can provide an emergency permit the same day for that kind of thing. So we'll talk a little bit about terminology. The first one, dredging versus sediment removal. You know, again, we'll talk a little bit more about dredging in the next slide. You know, dredging means a lot of things to a lot of people. Sediment removal, when we talk about sediment removal, you know, if you have some sediment accumulated after a storm event at your bridge or culvert, you can remove the sediment. There are conditions for how much you can take out, how deep you can go. That dredging means something much different to us. Channel cleaning, debris removal. We went over this in the green light. So if you, again, you have some deposition at your structure, you can remove that. Debris, you can always remove debris. Again, if you're working from the bank, you're okay. You can winch it out, you're okay. But as soon as you want to, as in the picture, you want to put a piece of equipment in the stream, you're going to need some kind of authorization from DEP. Maintenance and replacement, you want to, you know, we saw some slides where the culverts were damaged. We have different applications we can put together, or you can put together for us to authorize the work. Again, some of the things, you know, when we have activities, you know, people see streams, they don't always see wetlands. One of the complaints was I can't mow because my property is wet. You know, that's a red light to me that your property is probably a wetland. You may have mowed it for 20 years, but it's still there. And so it has hydrology. It likes to be wet. It may not have the vegetation because you mow it, but it might be a wetland. Channel widening can be a very frightening thing for us, because channel widening again affects the stream systems. You can widen the channel and it'll flow better in theory, but it's really not. It's not something that's an effective way to manage flow. I think in cases we've had some areas where we've actually put structures in, and you know, I did it in my prior position, you know, working with municipalities to put structures in to actually narrow streams so they, you know, when they have a higher flow, they carry the sediment streams or sediment transport systems. They transport sediment. It's very wide, it drops stuff out, and you never know what's going to happen. Replacing a culvert. If you want to replace a culvert or bridge, you need an authorization, but you know, one of the issues we have is we're going to ask you to make sure that when you replace the culvert that you're not going to increase flooding. You know, any increase in flooding is an issue for us, because your 1 inch increase may not seem like a lot, but that 1 inch may flood somebody that had never got flooded before. So that's important for us. Okay, the dreaded dredging question. Here's a myth: dredging the stream will eliminate flooding. Now, the reality, I'm not going to read all this to you. It's probably too much information for one slide. I violated PowerPoint rules 101. But basically, dredging, the first sentence, destabilizes the stream. It causes rapid sediment deposition in the channel. It can increase flooding downstream. It accelerates erosion, and it has a big impact on the aquatic habitat and food chain. We don't want to forget our role is to protect the environment too. So when someone comes to us and say they want to dredge the stream, why can't I dredge the stream? We used to always dredge the stream. You know, we always try to explain the bottom line: dredging at best only works temporarily, and generally worsens conditions above and below the project. It causes long-term instability of the stream. You know, you want to take a bulldozer and widen the stream and deepen the stream. You're actually disconnecting the stream from its banks. You'll worsen flooding. You'll increase the flood, and what happens oftentimes in that wide area, when you have sediment transport, it's going to deposit the sediment right there because it's wider. And so when it's moving fast, it comes to a slow area, it drops all that material out. You know, dredging in and of itself is, again, I dread when someone says we want to dredge. Why can't we dredge? Okay, so we talk a little bit more about removal of accumulated sediment. So removal of accumulated sediment is not just a good idea. It's required if you own a structure. This photograph, there's sediment deposition inside the structure. That would be challenging to get out, but you know, they're going to need to maintain it. If you look at that picture, maybe 1/3 of the capacity of the culvert is taken up by sediment. You know, that's that's not very good. So on the right side of your screen, we have the department's, it's called the Standards for Channel Cleaning at Bridges and Culverts. So if you own a bridge or culvert, we have standards for you to maintain that. So basically 50 feet above, 50 feet below, you can remove accumulated sediment. You can clean the culvert out. So some of the key things in that, though, you just can't, you know, we're regulatory, so we're not just going to say go ahead. It's not a green light, it's a yellow light. So there are requirements for you to do. So you must have an erosion sedimentation pollution control plan. So you're going to have some means of managing sediment during the activity. So you're going to have that. We're going to look for that to be done and probably reviewed by the County Conservation District. I'm hoping you all know that every county in our region has a conservation district, and you know, one of their expertises is erosion sedimentation pollution control. So they're the folks who, you know, not only will review the plan, but they can give you a lot of information on what they've seen and what works and what might not work. Again, you're limited to 50 feet above and below the structure. So, you know, we can't go 200 feet. It's a reasonable distance to manage your structure. If you feel the need to go further, obviously you're going to need some kind of authorization from us beyond meeting this document. There are limits to how much you can remove. Again, if you know folks want, once I'm in there with my excavator, I'm just going to, you know, 6 inches is good, 18 inches is better, 5 feet, go for it. That's not the way it works. So there are limits, and they're spelled out in the document about how wide you can go and how deep you can go. Basically, the width is going to be the general width above and below the culvert is about as wide as you can go. The depth is going to be maximum, I believe, 6 inches below the water, the high water. I'm sorry, the natural water level. You're going to have to provide the plan. Sorry, one of the things is you have to remove the material from the floodplain. We see folks who they want to remove this material, and their plan is to put it in the floodway. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us because it's in the floodway, so it's, you know, or even the floodplain. So if you have a flood condition, that material is going to go right back into the streams. So you have to take it away from the floodway, and we're going to want to know where you're going to put it. You have to provide a plan to us on what you're going to do. That way we can be sure that, you know, you're doing things properly, you understand what they're supposed to do, and that you will oversee your contractor to make sure that they're doing things properly. You know, you're going to have to notify the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission and the County Conservation District so they know what activity you're doing. If you're getting into the stream that might, you know, discharge some sediment to the stream, you want the Fish and Boat Commission folks to know about it ahead of time. And like I said, the County Conservation District, you should engage them in your design because they're experts in that kind of activity. And you may need other DEP permits for in-stream work. So again, if you want to get a piece of equipment in the stream, like in the picture here, I don't know how you would do that. I guess you could do it with buckets and shovels. That seems like a lot. So you're going to probably need some equipment in the stream. So you're probably going to need some kind of authorization from DEP. Okay, so I'm going to go into the types of Chapter 105 water obstruction and encroachment authorizations. So the dreaded one that everyone fears are joint permit applications. So it's called a joint permit because by applying for a joint permit, you're actually applying for a permit from us, the DEP, for a state authorization, and you're also applying for federal authorization through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I use USACE as my abbreviation for the Corps of Engineers. So, you know, in thinking about joint permits, you know, it's a more involved process. We also have general permits. So we have identified certain criteria for certain projects. If we have a small dock, bank stabilization, repair of existing structures, there are general permits that are published and the criteria is published. If you want to get a general permit, you would look at, for instance, if you want to repair your structure, it's a GP11. You would look at the conditions. Does my project meet the conditions? And you would then send in a registration form. So we're not going to issue a permit to you. We're going to acknowledge your authorization, acknowledge your registration package for a general permit. Emergency permits. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about them later because most folks glam onto it's an emergency, I need a permit. And then there are waived activities. So we have activities that are jurisdictional for us, but because of certain circumstances, we waive permitting requirements. You're still under our jurisdiction, but because of the nature of them, we can waive them. A little bit more in depth. So joint permits, again, both to the state and the Corps of Engineers. And one of the things that we do with the joint permits, the Corps of Engineers has, with the DEP, developed it's called the Pennsylvania State Programmatic General Permit 5 right now. It's 5. When I started it was 3, but we're up to 5 now. So in many cases, we can provide federal authorization, so you don't have to go to the Corps and get a separate permit for the activity. I would say, I'm ad-libbing here, 75% or more of the authorizations we give qualify for the general permit from the Corps, so they don't even review it. They're nice folks though. Again, you're applying both the DEP and the Corps of Engineers. The thing about joint permits, we have to publish them in the Pennsylvania Bulletin as an application. There's a public comment period. It's a 30-day period. Again, it's a longer process. It's a higher level of review. Next, we're going to talk about general permits. Again, you're registering your projects that fits the criteria established in that permit. And again, this is a simpler project than I put usually. I'm not stuttering. So, I think the conditions in the general permits are pretty black and white generally. We do see a lot of folks try to fit their square peg into the round hole of a general permit. So that's why it's usually. A general permit, I've seen them, we're issuing them within a month. I'm sure I said issue, acknowledging them within a month. We've had some for we had one for 4 years, I think, trying to get it resolved. So again, the process is usually simpler. Again, if we find it doesn't meet the requirements, we'll return it and suggest that you apply for a joint permit. Again, you still need a DEP acknowledgement before you proceed. Just because you send in your registration doesn't mean you can start the work. You still need us to acknowledge it. Okay, the good one, emergency permits. So I think, the area, I think one thing is we take emergency permits very seriously. If it's an emergency, again, the red area on the slide where there's an imminent threat to public health and safety in the environment requiring immediate remedial action. That's the bar. It's an imminent threat to public health and safety. After a storm, we see a lot of requests for this is an emergency. I'll tell you a couple we see. A lot of folks, when we talk about emergency permits after a storm event, like yesterday or last night, they think, I'm just going to get an emergency permit to fix this, without thinking about what, if you apply for an emergency permit, can you do it? So we had a municipality apply for an emergency permit after flooding a few years ago for 20,000, I think it was 20,000 linear feet of stream work. Not every inch of the stream, but think about 20,000 linear feet. It's almost 4 miles of stream. That municipality could not do that work. Certainly not, we see emergency permits only valid for 60 days, so they certainly couldn't do that work. So when we get a lot of requests for emergency permits after storms. We generally, if it's an area that's been hit hard, and we know there's going to be a lot of requests for help and emergency permits, we will designate a person to manage those. In the case of the 20,000 linear feet, one of our engineers worked with the municipality. There was several emergency permits issued for portions of that to individuals who could do it. The municipality got a general permit for the rest of the work, no 60-day time limit. That the municipality was able to decide how much they could do every year, and I think they're looking at a 5-year time frame to do some of the work that they wanted to do. So the emergency permits, again, sound great, not always great. We do see emergency permits come in for folks who simply did not plan to get a permit. We actually had one where 2 of my folks who work with me drive a road and saw that they're going to close the road because they're going to do this stream work. They didn't have a permit from us. Lo and behold, they applied for emergency permit. That's not, and again in the red, it's not an imminent threat to public health, safety, and environment requiring immediate remedial action. They were put in non-compliance. They were fined. We worked with them to get their permits to them because it wasn't a thing that was necessary. But emergency, prior planning, poor planning on your part is not constitute emergency on our part. Again, I can't say it enough. Where there's imminent threat to public health, safety, and environment requiring immediate remedial action. That's kind of the trigger for us. That's the bar. Again, if you have an emergency permit request, we're going to ask you why it's an emergency. You're going to want to show us that this is an emergency. We saw some slides of the woman who seemed to be cut off from the main road. That's an emergency scenario for us. A slide that's going to actually take the road out, even though the activity might have to be in the stream. That's an emergency kind of permit. We've had folks who their parking lot was washing away for years. They had an event and it made it worse. That's not an emergency. That's just, you didn't fix it when it was done. Again, valid for 60 days. And we're going to ask you to apply for the proper authorization. Actually, we're going to ask you. We're going to require that you apply for the proper authorization after the fact. So we have folks, it doesn't happen very often. Most folks, when they have an emergency, their 24-inch culvert collapsed. They need to get their driveway. They put another 24-inch culvert. We have seen people put a 12-inch culvert in where there was 24. And then lo and behold, we get a complaint from the neighbor because I'm flooding. It's backing up onto my property. So we're going to make you apply for the proper after-the-fact permit. And you're going to have to, if you put in something smaller that's going to cause problems, the worst-case scenario, you'll have to take it out. You may have to put a second one in, but that's case-by-case basis. So again, you have to get the proper authorization after the fact. We're not going to let you just go and do whatever you want. You're going to have to, and generally, we're going to ask you to send us pictures of what you've done. As an example of the municipality with the 20,000 linear feet, we prefer general permits as appropriate. If it can be done in a general permit, we're trying to be robust enough that we can get a general permit issued within a week. Again, this is a big if it comes in decent shape. Again, it's a general permit. The stuff's published. There's the criteria is black and white. We've done this in the case where the municipality, it was a transportation agency, didn't apply for a permit, then it applied for an emergency permit. We did their GP11 within a week. We didn't hold their job up much. To me, it's an easier way to do it. You have authorization. You don't have to come back. We work with folks. That's where we want to get to that point where we're working with folks to get this stuff done and have the right authorization and no back and forth. I don't know if I talk enough about emergency. There's someone in the room with me, so I'm bouncing stuff off, and so I think I've hit emergency permits pretty hard because I did it on purpose, because when we go to meet with folks, they hear emergency permits and it's like, oh, I can do everything. It's not the way it works. It's just, okay. I've never heard anyone say this. It takes too long to get a permit. I say that with tongue in cheek. I hear it all the time from from it, people above me and people, the regulated community actually. So obviously the most common complaint, I would think when we tell someone they need a joint permit, it's almost like telling them their dog died. It's like, oh my God, I got to get a joint permit. It's going to take years. And we have some that have taken years. We have some that I've seen some go as far as easy as 60 days. So we have another visitor.
You're good.
So I'm just a little bit about the Southwest region, about why it takes a long time. It might take a long time to get a permit. So as of May 1st, when I was preparing this presentation, I did it before yesterday. We had about 200 authorization requests in our queue. Just think about 200. I would say, unfortunately, it doesn't often decrease. If we issue, I think we're at 10 to 15 authorizations this week so far. We've probably gotten more than 10 in. There is a legend in DEP that there's this slowdown period around the holidays. I've been in the job 4 years now. Seems like 20, but 4 years, I've never experienced this slowdown period, never, ever. So we have a lot of work. There's 12 people that report to me. So 12 of us, you want to do some math, how many authorizations per person, and this is a constant. People are busy. We're a program where almost anything you want to do, you need an authorization from us. You want to build a house, guess what? Your utility line is probably going to cross the stream, or you need a permit from some sort. A lot of our permit authorizations are delegated to the districts. Still, I think 7 of the 10 districts in our region have delegation for 105, but we still have 200 authorizations in our queue. Authorization requests go through an average of 5 reviews. Think about that, 5 reviews. 2 for completeness, 3 for technical. For completeness, we're looking for just the basic information we need to review a permit for technical review. The average one has at least 1 letter goes out for completeness. So you review it, the letter comes back in, you review it again. There's your 2 reviews. And then technical reviews, typically we're seeing 2 letters go out with deficiencies in it. I think the worst might be like they had maybe 3 for completeness and 5 for technical. We're really not looking to do that very often anymore. We need to not babysit people. We've been directed not to do those kind of things. But if you're making progress towards a positive result, we're going to work with folks. But that just gives you a sense of how what the technical reviews are. Very few applicants request pre-application meetings. The 2nd and the 4th Thursdays of each month, we make available an engineer and a biologist to sit down with you to discuss your project, give you information on what permits you would need. If you want to impact a wetland, what might you need to provide to us? If you're going to relocate a stream, what you might need to do for us. So they can be very helpful. I think anecdotally, sometimes people come in too early and their projects change dramatically from the pre-application meeting. We've had folks who come in for, I think the most I've ever seen was 3. And as they progress through their process, and that can work really well. And the last thing is, DEP did a series of listening sessions. I've attended 1 or 2, and some of the feedback I saw, the regulated community was invited, some elected officials were invited, and consultants were invited to especially the one I'm thinking of. My 3 takeaways from some of the discussions were, after the complaints about DEP, being too picky, we're inconsistent, all the typical things that we see. One of the things that one of the consultants said, well, we put together an application, we know it's not ready. The applicant says, the person paying the bill says, send it in anyway, we'll let DEP tell us what's wrong with it and then we'll fix it. again, you see the slide about how many different reviews we have. So just submit something. We also heard applicants wait to the last minute. They didn't think about the permitting aspects. So they give the consultant a week to put something together. You know, if you have an application that's going to impact wetlands, going to realign stream channels, a week is not enough time to put a good application together. So, you know, we're going to get in something that's less than adequate. I'm being nice because he's here. He's telling me to be nice. So, you know, that's a problem for us. And one I didn't think of, but one of the consultants said, you know, when they bid jobs, they bid so tight that they preclude the experts from being part of the project. So they're giving it to the new person who's never done it. Now, this is not my words. These are the words from some of the consultants who spoke freely in front of their clients about, you know, so I'm bid out of the job because I'm too expensive. So, you know, that's kind of an issue that we have. We see applications from a company that seems to do a decent job, and the next one is not very good. And I'm going to stop there before I get fired. Okay, so I'm in decent shape. Okay, I'm going to finish this a little bit early, but contacts. Our general telephone number is 412-442-4000. Now, this is our 24-hour number. So if you call between 8 and 4, we use military time for our time sheets, so I'm going military on you. If you have questions during our office hours, you dial the general number and you ask for the Waterways and Wetlands in Charge person. Every day, one of the folks who work with me are designated as in charge. So if you have a call, we have a question about permitting, you want to set up a pre-application meeting, you have questions about the status of your permit, you know, that person is available to you. I would just say if they don't answer, leave a message, they'll get back to you. They generally get back to you the same day, certainly within 24 hours. You know, don't panic if they don't answer. The folks do have breaks, they do have to use the restroom. So they will get back to you. If you have an emergency during off hours, you can be connected to our emergency response folks. So that phone answers 24 hours a day. We do have an emergency response team. They can get a hold of permitting folks if we need to. Okay, this is me. And if you notice, I didn't put my phone number up there because I took a promotion, so I'd have to be in charge once every 2 weeks. So it's you know, a lot of pressure. But so I talk about in when I interview people about, you know, you're all familiar with the org chart where you see the person up here and all the people down under them in this nice little conical shape. So in my program, if you invert that, you see it becomes a funnel. I'm the narrow thing of the funnel. So I have 12 people who can answer your general questions. So I generally try to avoid, say this. Too late. Are you recording this? No, I mean, I have great people who can answer your questions. And, you know, if I have to spend the time setting up a pre-app, then I can't do the other things required of the funnel shape. So there's certain things only I can do. I'm not being cocky, just by my position, not my skill or quality. But there's a lot of other folks. If it's something unique, my folks listen to me, my folks. The folks that work with me come to me and we discuss how to handle things. So that's the way we work it. You know, if you want my number, it's 412-442-4271. Again, there's lots of people who can help you other than me. You have my email. I get probably 200 emails a day, so if I don't get back to you right away, that's why. And with that, I think the good Greg has maybe questions.
Yes, we have one question.
Only one question. Is it for someone that I work with?
I don't know. Anonymous.
Oh, okay.
It's anonymous. What obligation, can everyone hear me, Justin?
Yeah.
Okay, what obligation does a municipality have to maintain streams large trees, branches, etc., outside of their own culverts. Some residents believe it is our job to keep the streams clear of all debris.
Right, that was one of my first things about my municipality. Won't maintain the stream behind my house.
Yeah.
The property owner is responsible for the maintenance of the stream. The municipality is only responsible for streams on their property. If they have the adjacent property, they're responsible for removing that tree. They're responsible for if they own the culvert. But the property owner is the one responsible for management of the stream. The brochure we talked about, guidelines for maintaining stream in your community, is not for municipal officials. It's for everybody. Well, not just for municipal officials. It's for everybody on how to do things. I think some municipalities will try to help out folks and do some things. They're not required to. They do it, for whatever reason. Their goodness of their hearts, so they don't keep getting complaints, whatever. So I think, if some folks do that, they're not required to do it.
That's all the questions I have.
Well,
I'll jump on real quick.
okay.
If you're done.
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming again. And if you did have trouble with our chat feature, we do apologize. We're currently trying different formats to try to avoid this. We had some technical issues last class, so we're just trying to get around that. So if anything comes up, please email myself at gButler, or Greg gave you his email, but we'll get your questions answered.
I think I did such a good job that they didn't overwhelm them.
Yeah, it was completely thorough, yeah. So that is it for now. I want to thank Greg again. Thank you, Greg. He's standing right next to me, and the DEP for allowing Greg to come and send this message. So that's it for now, everyone. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next class. Thank you.